there will be a lot of things that people will say that will equip you for the future, which may be less of a shock when those things maybe start to happen.
Maybe not sort of a conventional sort of groups, but just going out there just to sort of be a little bit of activity, make some connections, and it brings sort of positivity.
So, hello and welcome to all of you who have joined us. Today we are unpacking dementia and we are going to be looking at community inclusion. So my name's Ruth, for those of you who haven't joined us before, and I lead on our dementia support services. So my day-to-day work is to ensure that you guys have got all the information, support and understanding about dementia and what that looks like available to you. Now, I'm incredibly honoured to be joined by two guests today. We've got Scott, who was the husband to the late Dame Barbara Windsor and a passionate advocate for dementia awareness. So thank you, Scott, for joining us today. And I've got Martin McGlynn from Carers in Bedfordshire as well, who is a real champion for unpaid carers and works with communities to support people affected by dementia. So before we start, just a really quick bit of housekeeping. Please do ask any questions you've got. We will do our absolute best to answer those as we go through today's session. But if we don't get round to your question, we will absolutely come back to you at the end of today's session as well. And as always, just a quick shout out to Right at Home for sponsoring our Unpacking Dementia series, because we couldn't do it without you. So thank you ever so much. So let's start. Scott, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm sure many viewers are familiar with your stories, but would you be happy to share a little bit about your journey supporting Barbara from that diagnosis to some of the challenges you faced along the way as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ruth. And it's really, thank you for asking me to come on. It's a real privilege when anyone asks me to share the story. What I would say is this, a lot of people say to me, oh, but it was a bit different because, Barbara was in the public eye, so your experience was different. What I want to make quite clear is this: dementia, Alzheimer's has no boundaries. It doesn't care who you are. It will come in and it will do the same job on everyone, let's say, and that includes the carers and the loved ones, which in this case was me. At diagnosis, I remember I did something which I think, having spoken to a lot of people now, a lot of people do. I personally went to the darkest place possible at diagnosis. I immediately thought to myself, oh my God, what's going to happen? She's not going to remember me. She's not going to do this. She's not going to do that. So I kind of went into this immediate panic and sadness. And in a way, I sense a bit of grieving as well. Yeah. I went into an immediate sense of grieving for Barbara. And what her neurologist told me very soon afterwards was, because I went back to see him, and never be worried about asking the medical people questions. Don't feel intimidated or feeling you should know, because the fact is we just don't know things. It's an incredible shock to us. Most of us are not versed in the world of dementia or caring for someone. And what he said to me was, your reaction is very common, Scott, but what I'd say to you is, this could be years down the line. The things that you're worrying about may not happen for many years. And try and live in the day. Try and live in the moment. Try and cherish the time that you have now with your loved one and not go too far down the line. So, that was my first immediate lesson. For our journey, at first, Barbara didn't really accept it. She didn't.
I think that's incredibly common as well. Yeah. We hear that a lot in the work that I do, that denial, that this isn't me, this isn't happening. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she constantly would tell me there's nothing wrong with my memory, although of course there were signs, which is why I initially suggested that we go and see someone for her to have a test. And of course, it's a progressive illness. And what I found as a carer was, first of all, I wanted to do everything myself. I felt it was my duty to do everything myself. And I did that for a long time, I have to say. I wanted to be caring for Barbara. I wanted to make sure she was okay. I wanted to make sure that the house was running, that I could still get on with my job. It took me a long time to reach out for help. And also, you have to learn on the job. So you know, you learn for yourself the things that kind of do work and don't work. For
And
instance,
actually, at this point, I'm going to ask Martin. I'm going to suggest that's probably quite similar to what you've heard. But Martin, you're out there, you're working with carers day and day. Would you agree this is the same story that we hear, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think as well, certainly from sort of like Scott's perspective, he said, "Oh, this is the first time I've sort of gone through anything like this. This is the first time I've been caring for dementia." And for most people out there, it's the same. They've all of a sudden been giving this diagnosis. They've and sort of when you're caring for someone with something, with that sort of, what dementia is, and no one, a lot of people don't know what that is, and it's and it can be really scary as well, just to think of, all the, maybe even say, lack of awareness in the general public of, what it can be, and what it can't be. And
And I
yeah.
think as much as we try, and there's some really amazing work going on to destigmatize dementia, there's no doubt about it. It absolutely still comes with a lot of fear. And that's been, ingrained for a long, long time. And we are starting to see that change. And that's brilliant. But it doesn't stop us having those feelings when we have to embark on that journey ourselves, for sure. And I think sometimes other people's reactions to our loved one's diagnosis is also quite challenging. And Scott, was that something you found as well? Some of the people's reactions around you and Barbara was that it can be both ends of scale, can't it? I've seen some amazing reactions, and I've seen actually some where you think, gosh, that's quite hard.
Yeah, it really was. What I found, you notice, is there's certain people that do drop away from your circle. I didn't have a lot of them, but there were some. But what I had to kind of also do is look at it from their perspective. A lot of them could have felt very awkward because they didn't understand what it was, or what they're supposed to say, or how they're supposed to react. It could be that it triggered something in a past memory for them that they didn't want to go into again. So there can be a lot of different reasons why people do withdraw, unfortunately. But you also will find that you'll get the most incredible support from friends and from family. And the thing is, that going back to that part about wanting to do it all by yourself, please reach out and talk to someone. It's so vitally important for you as the carer, because your world will become a lot smaller, and you will become isolated with the person if you are their primary carer.
And I think one of the things you've touched on there, Scott, which I couldn't agree with more, is we've had a really lovely comment from Jackie, actually, talking about anticipatory grief. And I think this is something that actually more of us experience than we like to think, or maybe recognise, where, we grieve the person, the life we would have had, for sure. But there is resources out there. There is absolutely help out there, and, finding that resources, that support and that understanding. And that's when we're reaching out to those that, are there for us, can really help us through that.
I wish I would have done that a lot earlier. Maybe that's where, in our case, because it wasn't public knowledge at that time, that I wasn't going to more groups, but since I started campaigning, etc., I've done talks at lots of groups, care groups, and oh my goodness, I would have benefited so much from sharing my story with people that understood that we're in the same position. So that's an on reflection thing. So anyone who is kind of on the start of their journey with a loved one, I would say, do reach out, do find out where the groups are that you can take part in, because it will be a great relief for you and for your well-being as well.
And bringing you in here, Martin, you're obviously in a local support group. I know you're in the Bedfordshire area, but I know from my own experience, there's groups up and down the country, and there's, we can always support people to find those groups if that's a struggle. But what do you notice that groups make a difference with? Even just the small little things. Do you notice that we can pick people up? What do you see day to day?
So with the support, generally we will support people in the Bedfordshire area when they've just received a diagnosis of dementia. And what I find sort of quite, there are a lot of themes that sort of come up at the beginning of the diagnosis where people are looking for support. This could be things such as welfare and benefits. This could be about well-being and even just information around dementia. But when it comes to suggesting about reaching out for support, when it comes to talking about groups, it can be really divisive. Where when I'm speaking to carers or people living with dementia, some people are like, yes, I want to go to the groups, I want to get to support. Whereas some people straight away just don't want to do that. And there's many different reasons. Some people may not physically be able to get to groups. Some people may not just don't want to go through maybe social anxiety generally. It could be through. It may make the diagnosis.
Well, we've got Gail in the
real.
comments here, and she said that her husband has a recent diagnosis, but they don't feel like they're dementia enough for support groups yet. And I think actually that's a really valid point. And Scott, was that something you felt that actually I don't fit into this, this box of this is what dementia looks like?
Especially early on. I think that's a really good point, because early on you think, well, in our particular case, Barbara was still very compos mentis in a lot of things. Yes, she was getting repetitive. Yes, it would show itself very slowly in different ways. But I think there's something about that kind of, once again, it's that not feeling worthy of joining in yet because things haven't got as bad. But I think one would benefit right from the beginning. And that's me talking, from hindsight. So I'm really talking to anyone out there who is just starting. There will be a lot of things that people will say that will equip you for the future, which may be less of a shock when those things maybe start to happen. As we know, everyone's journey is different with dementia.
Absolutely. But I think there's also a lot about there is no magic wand. I mean, I know a lot of the sessions I do and a lot of the people you work with, Martin, all of us would love to sit here and wave a magic wand and go, if you do this, this will be okay. There's not. But what I have found, and also from personal experience, finding somebody else who goes, this is really hard, or I didn't expect to be having these conversations or doing this, actually just gives almost a sense of relief. It's that whole, I'm not the only person doing this. And I think my experience is that it's fair to say that comes at any stage of dementia, an awful lot of other illnesses as well. Just finding somebody with the same shoes as you to walk on that journey with can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And I find that a lot of times people are building connections, people are finding support around them when they sort of come into sort of problems in general life. And as I say, dementia can be so, individual, but there's sort of help around. There's help, it could be someone, I can help with a lift, or maybe their carer can help get pick up some bits from the shops or something like that. So there's definitely loads of ongoing support that you can kind of.
And I'd like to touch on, sorry, Martin, jump in. I'd like to really touch on something, because Samantha's popped in our comments that she'd absolutely love to meet other carers, but really doesn't want to sit in a circle and cry. Are there any groups that aren't all about talking? And certainly, I mean, my experience of leading on our dementia holidays, yes, we do have tears sometimes. It's an emotive subject, but I think we laugh far more than require. And, I think that goes to, kind of having a sense of humour, and actually it's okay to laugh when things are funny, because if you don't laugh, you are gonna, you're gonna lose it. And there are times where actually this journey you go on, there is some wonderful occasions and really special circumstances you find yourself in that maybe you wouldn't do if that person didn't have a diagnosis. And Scott, did you find any of that with Barbara when you were supporting her?
Very, very much. I mean, the humour a lot of the time kind of came from Barbara as far as that we were concerned. She'd just suddenly say things which were totally unblinkered and which I would find funny. First time I was ever doing a marathon for the charity, she looked at me and I came downstairs ready to go out for a run, and she looked at me and she went, "What are you doing?" So I said, I'm just going to go out for a run. I'm going to run a marathon, Barbara. She went, "You, with your little legs?" She said, "You can't run." There's still those wonderful parts of them that that are still there. So, don't think immediately that you're going to lose all of that. Funny enough, David Baddiel once said to me, and it was when we first went public with Barbara's diagnosis, and he's spoken a lot about his own journey with his father. And he pulled me to one side and he said, whatever happens, Scott, don't worry. There'll always be a little part of her in there somewhere. And I think that's a really good thing to hang on to as well. There will be those little glimpses of humour and things that will present themselves. And if I can just say one thing, which I know I felt a lot of guilt about and a lot of shame about, was when I did get things wrong, and I did get things wrong because I'm human, and as carers we will get things wrong. I used to really beat myself up, and I used to feel terribly ashamed of myself for getting things wrong. In the early days, I would contradict Barbara's conversations when I knew, obviously, what she was saying wasn't correct. And I'd get into an argument with her. And that's something I really had to learn. But what I will say is, from a carer's point of view, I really had to learn to forgive myself for the things that I didn't know and wasn't expecting. And a lot of it came from my fear, because I was so petrified inside of what was happening in that respect, that I wanted to get it right. I wanted to do the best, but we won't. And we are human, and we have to look after ourselves. It's so vitally important.
And I think that's a really, really valid point, because I know when I do our carer sessions, we are giving practical support and advice. But actually what we also reference is that at what point do you suddenly go, this is dementia? Dementia does not come with a rash. There is no physical change in a lot of cases for that person. And actually, what is somebody just having a difficult day? And it's understanding that even with some of the support and advice we say, it goes back to that magic wand. It might work one day, and other days it might not work. And some days we're just human. I sit here with this professional hat on, and I love what I do. And I have, knowledge on tap about how to support somebody. But actually, when I found myself being asked about pork chops throughout the 15th time of the day, I did say, how many times do you have to ask? And then comes with the guilt, because again, we're all just guilty. But it's not about, I think it should be that, remembering if we did not support that person, how different their life would be. And I think, Martin, one of the things that is so helpful about carers organisations, finding that support, whether it's like a local neighbourhood support, community group, through to carers groups like yourself, it's finding out that actually we are only human, but there is some steps and advice. And, when things get difficult, I know you sometimes, would I be right in thinking you're able to offer a little bit of advice and support around financial matters and those things that actually, I didn't see this coming, so I don't know what to do.
Absolutely. I fully agree. Looking after the carers, looking after the carer is so equally important. And also, due to circumstances, everyone being very sort of individual, but you may sort of put your own needs last, but looking after the carer's needs is hugely vital, as well as for the carer, but also for the person you're caring for as well. And I think it's really, really beneficial, and to look after yourself, and certainly where you can to reach out, because there are a lot of support out there. There's lots of different groups, and there are lots of different people who can support you, whether that be someone through a more professional side or just another friend who can certainly help through their experience.
And I think also it's key to understand, we're talking about sort of carers groups. Often there is one-to-one support available. There is services such as befriending. For some people, I'm quite a people person. I love people, but actually for some people, groups is like, oh no, it's it's like it's almost the opposite, isn't it? It's that that's not for me, but there is still help and support out there. Would you agree?
Absolutely. There is, and so much support out there, and there's so many different ways. I think, as you were sort of saying, you may not even realize areas where you may be struggling. It could be thinking, whether it's to do with, say, welfare and benefits or well-being support, or as you say, maybe sort of isolation. I'd certainly would say definitely get in touch with who you can, sort of local groups. You may have to be connected them through your social services or local Age UK, but
Yeah.
there is definitely lots of support, and they can, support you in more ways than you might even be thinking of that you may.
What I'll do at the end of today's session as well is I know we've got a link on our webpage to lots of different resources out there, so I'll make sure that goes out. But actually, Scott, I'm going to put this one to you, and I'd really love an honest answer, which I'm sure we will get. Is Jeff has popped in the chat. Is it normal to feel embarrassed even when I know I'm doing my best?
Yeah, and do you feel it's kind of thing is, are you feeling embarrassed because you've got it wrong, or are you feeling embarrassed because maybe your loved one has said something that other people may interpret as strange, or there's kind of that embarrassment thing, I think, goes back to the stigma around it. And I think it works on both ways. You can, if you're not sure of what it is at first, you can get embarrassed if your loved one's behaviour suddenly becomes something that isn't what we'd say normal social.
How did you manage that? Was that something you found with Barbara, and like feelings you had? And if so, what did you do?
I think mine was a lot of apprehension because, as I say, in the fact that she was in the public eye, that when it wasn't public knowledge and we went out and she would be behaving in a way that people wouldn't expect her to, she may, be a very withdrawn, or she'd rely on me to answer things. I would get a little bit embarrassed, and I would think, oh God, what must they be thinking? Who cares? Who cares what anyone thinks? But I think, in relation to this question, it is normal to feel embarrassed. And that's whether we're embarrassed about ourselves not being up to scratch and giving ourselves a hard time, or whether it's how the outside world is viewing us. But the fact is, to me, none of it matters. You can only do your best of your ability and your knowledge of what you can do, and never feel embarrassed for your loved one, because they can't help it. They can't help what's happening to them. And I'm sure anyone who would be judging in that way are not people any of us should be worrying about anyway.
100%. I think that takes us on to Graham's comment, who's contacted us, and he said since his dementia has progressed, he stopped going to his group because he finds himself forgetting what he's about to say, and it makes him feel anxious. And I think, I can really relate to that. That's something I see a lot, and just when you can't find those words, or, you can't put somebody into context, and it is really hard. But I think ultimately, people are there to support you. I've never, thankfully, come across anybody in any of the groups I've supported and worked with where, that understanding isn't there. And actually, take your time. If you're forgetting what you're going to say, it will come back. And if it doesn't, don't worry about it. It's what we're here for. It happens to me, and it happened just before we joined this call. My words went right out the window, because ultimately, yes, dementia is a part of that, but that's also a very human thing as well. To, where am I going with this? What is this? And I think everybody empathizes and understands with that. So I would say, Graham, when you feel able to, because actually there are good days and there are bad days. If you're having a good day, absolutely step outside, because sometimes, even if we just listen to what others are saying and be a part of that community and that inclusion can make a massive difference to our overall well-being, for sure. Okie dokie. That's been really, really helpful. So I'm going to ask Martin, would you have any examples of the work that you've done with families that have really supported getting them back out into the community, and, the benefits that you can see for them once they've received that diagnosis?
Absolutely. So one comes to mind where sort of like a couple, and it was the wife caring for the husband. Wife was talking to me about everything that's going on, and we were talking about all different bits, and then we got to the sort of subject of communities and local support, and she said that her husband just wasn't interested. He would go off, do his own thing, but he would sort of stay at home, didn't need any support, didn't need any help, didn't want to go to any dementia groups. So this as well, it was getting her down. She was struggling as well with that, because he was sort of, she could see that he was getting a bit more agitated and a bit more, just she could see that he needed the support. So we were looking into trying to things of ways of suggestions that could help, and we decided to sort of put forward it was a local gardening group. It was a previous interest of his, and he agreed, right, okay, I'm going to go to one. I'll go to one. I don't know if it was a thing to sort of keep the peace, so to speak, but he said, I'll go to one, I'll see what it's like. And then she was like saying, there's no pressure. As long as you've gone to one, that's fine. If it's, if it's something not for you, it's not for you. So I was in contact with them. He went to one, he came back and he was like, actually, I did enjoy myself. It was good. It was something really close. So and he said, I'm going to go back. So he sort of went back, and then he sort of built connections. So, and I was sort of in contact with them over a sort of a longer period of time, and he was really happy. It gave him something in his week, something positive to look forward to throughout the week. It gave him a bit of sort of extra sort of connections. And even during his sort of off time, he was like thinking about, oh, what can I do? What would be my next sort of project with the gardening? How can I sort of do this at home? So maybe not sort of a conventional sort of groups, but just going out there just to sort of be a little bit of activity, make some connections, and it brings real sort of positivity. And sort of for the carer, she was particularly happy as well because she got sort of an extra sort of hour to 2 hours a week, certainly, where she could look after herself as well. So so that was something. So sort of going from that, I would definitely say try reach out. If it's something that you don't want to do, certainly have a look to see if there's any other particular activities that you can do. And as well, if you go to one and it's not for you, then it's not for you. But you can just go there and, go to a group just to have a cup of tea and biscuits. And, there's no pressure on for you to leave. But from this
Scott, if you could give our carers one message around just finding that community, finding your community, finding ways that you're included or the person you love is supported, what would your message be?
It would be to reach out and to remember that when you share how you're feeling and what's going on, not only are you helping other people, but you're really helping yourself. And it will stop it becoming overwhelming, because when we all try and keep things to ourselves and hide things and cope with things, sometimes that can have a real adverse effect. So please reach out, just take a risk, reach out, say how you're feeling, and you'll be so surprised at the rewards that will come back at you and how much lighter you're going to feel.
Thank you. Both of you, your experiences and you sharing those with us has been absolutely amazing. But I think it's really key to understand that when we talk about inclusion, it is not just a buzzword. We really do need a world where people can continue living, enjoying life and connecting with others, because all of us need that friendly face, like dementia or no dementia, we need that in our lives. Thank you so much, Scott and Martin, for joining us today. It really has been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you both on your journeys as we continue to spread this word about supporting people living with dementia and their carers. Thanks ever so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.